Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I am here with a very special guest, Miss Frost. Miss Frost is the co-vice lead of the Space Medicine and Life Sciences group at the Space Generation Advisory Council. Having completed a Bachelor of Sciences in Physics and Medical Physics, she is studying graduate medicine with the view of pursuing a career in aviation and aerospace medicine. She is currently in medical school following her dreams of studying space medicine. I'm so excited to be able to talk with such an amazing expert who has similar ambitions to me. Welcome, Ms. Frost. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk to us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to learn about your journey and how you got into space medicine because it's such a unique career choice. Not a lot of people know about space medicine. So before I kind of get into understanding how you got interested in it, what's like your typical day as a student? And now because of coronavirus, I'm sure it's a little different. But how does your typical day run?
Yeah, it's quite different at the moment. So I'm actually in my first year of medical school because I did my first degree down in London. So right now, a typical day is just going through the lectures that they put online for us. So we watch the lectures and then I tend to make notes on those lectures separately to that. So that'll be the second half of the day, and then maybe make some flashcards because in medicine you're constantly having to sort of test your recall and that kind of stuff. And then in the evenings, I try and kind of do the space medicine side of stuff because unfortunately right now space medicine is just kind of a hobby on the side. So I'm doing research projects with groups, and it's a great community, so there's lots of stuff to be done, but it has to be in my own time. So that's probably the evenings.
Yeah, are you looking to, after your med school, to pursue a different track than space medicine? Or are you going to try like weaving your interests together to make a career out of it?
I think eventually I'd love to make a career out of it. For now in the UK, that's not very easy. So I think I'd probably just go down my training as a doctor and do space medicine research with other groups on the side, or maybe try and get across the US and do PhDs or that kind of stuff. But yeah, for now, there isn't really a track the same as there is in the US over here in the UK.
Yeah, I know space medicine, especially, is such a new topic. I feel like now with a lot of commercial flight, people are understanding the value of researching about how human biological systems are affected in space. So I think it's going to become a very prominent field in the future. So it'll be very interesting to see that.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious, like what got you into space medicine? I mean, how did you discover it? Especially because it's not prominent, especially in the UK. Like, how did you get into it?
So kind of a roundabout way and quite late on in my sort of studying. So as a kid, I guess I wanted to be an astronaut, like loads of kids, but then you tend to lose sight of that dream when adults start saying, oh, you probably need a realistic dream now, that kind of thing. And then I went down the science track because I just loved science at school, and I studied physics and medical physics for my undergraduate degree. And it's during that I realized that I love the physics side in terms of the astrophysics, and I love the medical side. So I was trying to find a way of combining that, because the medical physics degree itself is nothing to do with space medicine. It's actually all about x-rays and MRIs and how those machines work and how other machines work in hospitals and that kind of thing. So it was really just through Google searches and having a look at what other people were combining astrophysics and medicine with, and it came out with space medicine, and that's how it all started, really.
Yeah, I feel like that's honestly everyone. I feel like it all starts with just a search because space medicine is obviously not something you learn in school. It's not even a career choice that people know exist in the broader, like just in schools.
Yeah.
If I tell my teacher, oh, I really like space medicine, they're at first a little confused because putting the two words together is like common, but I think making a career out of it is a little bit unusual. So to see, you interested in getting into it is really cool. I feel like one of the reasons I started this interview series was to show people the diverse career choices and the diverse people that are in the space industry. And one of the things about the career choices was everyone dreams of being an astronaut when they are a little kid, just like you said, but they don't. When they grow up, they start kind of diverging into different passions, but they don't know how to combine it into a career. So to see like different types of careers from like art into space, business aspect into space, consulting, as well as medicine. I think it's very fascinating. And I'm kind of curious, like, what research are you doing any research right now? I know you're doing a lot of stuff outside of medical school, so I'm sure you still are like super busy with your schedule. But is there any specific research you're trying to work on or something you're reading about that you find very interesting you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, so I'm part of a group with three other students. So there were four of us, and we started about a year and a half ago, I think, doing research together. And so they're also all women in science. So they've got backgrounds in physiology, they're medical students, and then they have backgrounds in physics as well. So we've kind of just been looking for different projects to do. Our first project was on the pre-flight checks that would be needed for space tourists. So how could a doctor decide if a space tourist was healthy enough to go up on a sort of parabolic suborbital flight? And so that's took shape as a kind of big report, and then we're now trying to write a paper on the more educational side, so kind of a resource for doctors to look to if they had no idea what space tourism was and one of their patients came to them asking if they were fit enough to go to space. So something they could quickly look at to find out a bit more about space medicine in the space tourist side of things.
That's so cool. I think just informing people is the number one priority at this point. And it's cool to hear your research with another amazing group of women that you're working with.
Yeah, they're
So,
called the Paraba ladies, so we've
oh, okay,
done
that's
that
cool.
quite
I
good.
actually have to do some research on that. I had no clue. That's cool. And my other question that I always ask this question to everyone, especially people who have such unique career choices or people who are interested in such unique passions. Did you always imagine yourself in the position you are in today? I'm sure the answer is probably no. Everyone has twists and turns, but you've always been interested in science. So did you always know you kind of wanted to go into the medical industry, or did you kind of have some, like twists and turns?
Yeah, the idea was always to go into science, but I had actually always pictured myself just doing research in a lab because I knew I liked science in general. I never really considered medicine as a serious option just because when you think of medicine, you think of the sort of top 1%, the cleverest students and that kind of thing. And I'd never really put myself in that group. And I think that's a shame because it puts a lot of people off that would be great in medicine. And I think the more we open it up, the more interesting backgrounds we'll get and the more perspectives we'll get. But medicine was never really on the track until my undergrad, and then I realized actually seeing other medical students and seeing that it was feasible. It wasn't sort of a crazy crazy degree. It is intense, I won't lie, but it's really interesting, and it's fun to do something you're interested in.
Okay, that's really cool. So you decided that seeing your peers in undergraduate that you wanted to go into the medical field. What degree were you pursuing again in undergrad?
So my first degree was more of an engineering side. It was physics and medical physics. So yeah, it didn't really have many links over to medicine itself, but there were a lot of medical students in the department sort of doing projects and that kind of thing. So that gave me the idea.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I feel like also there's so many stereotypes around many industries, specifically medicine. I feel like people are like scared to go into it because they think you have to be a
Yeah,
genius. Same thing with the space industry, like the terminology, oh, it's rocket science, or oh wow, you're a
absolutely.
rocket scientist. Like I feel like there's a lot of stereotypes or biases around it. People feel like they're not good enough to be a part of space. So a major theme in my interviews is actually space is for all. Through showing diverse and showcasing diverse space professionals, I want to show people that you don't have to look like a certain someone or be a certain gender or have a certain economic status to be a part of space. So there's no need to be scared. So it's really nice to see that even you can change your career if you have a true passion for something at any point, even in college, even beyond college. So I think that's really nice to see.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd encourage anyone just to follow what they're passionate about. I know a lot of people tend to think, oh, if I want to be an astronaut, I have to tick the boxes. But I think the most important thing is you're doing something you enjoy, because then that's where you'll excel. And if you're just trying to get everything on the list done, then you might not necessarily enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like if you have that passion, I feel like work doesn't really seem like work. I feel like as a high schooler, obviously, I don't actually know how it feels to work in an industry where you love to do, but being able to talk with professionals who love doing what they do, I could really see that they're completely enjoying what they're doing. And doing research even is so cool. Like I always envision myself doing some sort of research in space medicine because I love research, but at the same time, I'm also into action and actually doing things. So it's just really conflicting, but to be able to combine that also is very cool.
Yeah, and there's plenty of research to be done. There's so much that we don't know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's a world of possibilities. Like sometimes when I read about certain professors and their like research papers, I'm always like, oh my gosh, we still don't know this. Wait, that didn't hit me. We still don't know that. So I think it's really interesting to just kind of we overlook the smaller things. So to be able to get into that is really cool. Another question I'm sure a lot of people who are probably younger are probably wondering is, was there like a certain mentorship you were involved in or internship role or a volunteer role when you were younger in like high school or maybe even in your undergraduate that helped you kind of have a boost in what you're doing today?
There wasn't a program as such. I think the space medicine community in general is really welcoming and really keen to help students who want to get involved because they sort of recognize that they're the future of the research and they're the people that will be working on it later down the line. So I think just in general, getting stuck in, there's lots of organizations like the Aerospace Medicine Students and Residents Organization in the US, which is attached to the Aerospace Medicine Association, ASMA. There's the Women in Aerospace Medicine group now that's just been started as well. And there's a few in the UK. There's UK Space Labs, UK SEDS, lots of acronyms, as with all space things,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But if you just do a quick Google and just join organizations, so a lot of these places use Slack channels. So that's like a communication channel, and you can post things on there asking for research project or jump in on someone else's project. It's just about, yeah, getting involved, but also not being scared to sort of contribute, because I know as a student I always felt like there wasn't much that I could do, but there is actually a big difference you can make even just being a student. There's a lot you can offer, and a whole different perspective is often quite helpful. So try and ignore that imposter syndrome and reach out and ask for help. I also just contacted people. I asked to do my dissertation on a space medicine topic, so that was quite lucky because then I could just blanket email lots of people and ask them for advice on the kind of work that I was doing. And I was lucky enough as well through the Women in Aerospace Medicine group. I've now got a mentor, which is Dr. Bonnie Posselt, who's with the RAF and over in the US at the moment. But she's one of the very few space medicine, sort of going through the space medicine training in the UK, and she's great. But yeah, there's not anything in particular. If you are a school student, there's the ISET, which is ISSET, and they run this mission discovery, which is something I worked on, where they get school students to come in for a week and they design an experiment they want to send to space, and then you present your experiment to the whole sort of cohort of students during the summer. And if your experiment wins, then it does actually get to go to space, which is pretty cool. And you can be involved in the development of that, or you can just sort of let them do that in the lab. But that's definitely a really great experience. I think they do run some in the US. They run them all over the world as well, Singapore, UK, all that.
That's so cool. I actually haven't heard about it, so that's very interesting. I'll definitely do some research
Yeah,
after this
mission
interview.
discovery. It's really good.
Yeah, and I think it's always about what you were saying about networking and like making connections and not being afraid to reach out is a really important and key thing. Like during the interviews, I think stepping out of my comfort zone to ask people for interviews, people I don't know, but I've read about and their work is pretty impressive. So I think being able to reach out to people is also like just another step towards more knowledge and getting to know more about your industry. Like through these interviews, I've learned so much. I mean, constantly I just learned about a new program, but like every time I learn like at least 10 new other things. So it's really nice to hear, different stories and different backgrounds because everyone has come from a different position and different place.
Mm.
So to see the different programs they were in and their different journeys is really interesting to listen to.
Yeah, and people always want to help. So if you ask for advice or if you ask someone to tell you about their career, then often people love talking about that kind of stuff. So they'll always respond.
Yeah. And another thing I'm really curious about is because you're so knowledgeable about the space medicine, even if you're not, I mean, you are part of a research group, but that's technically not what you're learning in school. You're more focused on anatomy, probably, and organic chemistry. So I was wondering, how do you keep yourself updated with a busy schedule in med school? Because obviously I always hear, medical school is one of the hardest places. How do you manage your schedule, and how do you keep yourself updated about what's happening in the space industry? Because every time I open like Twitter or something, I'm seeing a completely new discovery or a new asteroid or a new planet that they've discovered. So it's just like to see all these things that are happening in our world constantly. How do you keep up with everything?
Yeah, and the space industry is also moving so fast. I feel like I don't know enough. I feel like I could know more, but I think in general with space medicine, what's great is that it's a lot of it is online. So there's lots of papers you can read if you're interested in a specific space medicine topic. I was quite lucky in that there was a specific module that I could choose to go to, like an extra credit that I did at university in space medicine and extreme environment physiology, which also touched on altitude and diving. So that gave me a bit of a basis understanding and also a bit of a critical eye when I was looking at these papers to see sort of what the shortcomings might be and that kind of thing. And that was with Dr. Kevin Fong. So it was really lucky that he was based at UCL. And then from then it has been on Twitter a lot. I use Twitter to kind of keep up to date with the latest things, and in the space medicine world on Twitter, people often post the new papers that have come out. And really one of the silver linings of this year, although it's obviously not been ideal, is that there's a lot of stuff online. So a lot of conferences have recorded their space medicine talks and they're on YouTube, or a lot of conferences are live on Zoom and that kind of thing. And so you can log in and have a listen to some of the research that people are doing. But yeah, it doesn't really feel like work because it's stuff that I'm interested in, but I definitely feel like I could be doing more. So there's always more to learn and more to read about, isn't there?
Definitely, always. There's always like constant papers to read, constant new discoveries. It's hard to keep up with everything. I think definitely social media helps to have that environment where they constantly, update you on different things you should check out and read. I think that definitely helps. And I'm more curious now that I've kind of learned about your journey and to see how you're so passionate about space medicine. I'm also kind of curious about like your views on the space industry currently and kind of to learn more about your excitement. So my question is like, what excites you and like what makes you nervous about the space industry?
I think it's the same thing for both, really. It's the commercialization of space. So that's, for me, it's more on the space tourist side because I'm coming at it from a sort of medicine and human angle. So what excites me is that these Virgin Galactic flights are doing well and they're getting great results and they might be getting space tourists up soon. And that's an incredible advance and something that even a few years ago, I wasn't really sure was going to happen in my lifetime because with space, the timelines are always delayed. So that is really cool. But it's also quite scary in the sense that for the medicine side, you're going to have people that have paid for a ticket and you can't really turn them away. So it's like on aeroplanes, they don't do any medical checks for you to go on an airplane. They assume that you're fit to fly. But the kind of flights that these tourists are going to be going for are going to be very different to going on an airplane, and the sort of up to 3G forces and then the microgravity and that kind of thing is going to be very different, a whole different sensation, and that is what they're paying for. But there's little that we know about how different medical conditions will react to those conditions because all our astronauts have been super fit, super healthy, sort of in the peak state of their life. So that is quite scary, is that we don't know much, and because they'll be paying, so there's a commercial interest, is a question of whether these companies will do the thorough checks that they need to do, whether they will decide that either they tell the tourist, we don't recommend you fly, but if he still wants to or she still wants to, then they will fly, or whether they just blanket tell them they can't fly. It's a bit of a sort of way up between someone's paying for a ticket and someone's not fit to fly. So that'll be an interesting sort of development to follow and see if they publish that, if they talk about it. For now, it's all sort of kept very private and they haven't really published much. But I think we do need to do a bit more research on how different, like heart conditions and that kind of thing, react to some of the forces that people will be under.
Yeah, definitely. I think that brings up two really good points. I mean, one, I hope that in the future it'll become normalized to have space tourism, or to a certain
Yeah.
extent normalized. So maybe you could go to your physician and they could do like a certain general checkup, maybe like, something more simple where you don't have to go through this huge, enormous process
Yeah.
to see if you're fit to fly. Hopefully, it can become at that point, to that stage where it's normalized. I'm not sure if that's going to happen soon, but hopefully it will. And another thing that's so interesting is I'm actually very curious on researching about how like microgravity could affect certain diseases in your body, because I've read, certain diseases actually reduce their severity in space, whereas others can become worse, and you don't know how they're going to react. And like a specific thing that I'm really passionate about, and I'm actually trying to do like a white paper on, is how microgravity can affect the vagal nerve, because I've been doing a lot of research on fainting and syncope, because
Yeah.
my dad actually is really frequently faints. And so I've been doing a lot of like research on how the vagal nerve can impact this. And so then I was like, oh, I should do something related to space, because I'm really curious. I'm trying to do a lot of research on that. So that's kind of something that I'm really interested in, to like see that that's a prevalent issue, to see how different humans can interact differently in space. Because right now, obviously, like you said, the astronauts that are going up are very healthy. They go through a lot of training. So to be able to send a common human being who doesn't have any extensive training to go to space, we don't know how that's going to work. So it'll definitely be very interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like a really interesting paper as well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to do a lot of research on that, and hopefully that'll be very cool. Another thing is that, how do you foresee changes in your industry? Because obviously, I'm sure like maybe 2, 3 decades ago, if you maybe not 2, 3 decades ago, maybe like 50 years ago, if someone said, oh, I'm going to be going to space medicine, I mean, I'm sure people would be a little bit confused, because rocketry was based off of engineering or like physics or like calculus and mathematics. So I'm maybe there was a little bit of space medicine, but not as prevalent. So how do you like foresee changes in your industry?
I think one of the things that's already happening, but will start to happen more and more, is sort of integrating the medicine side, so the human considerations, with the engineering from the very beginning. Because as you say, originally the engineers designed the rockets, and then the doctor was like, okay, well, you can fly or you can't fly. But if you start integrating some of the medicine into it early, which is what they did for the ISS, because they had to sort of create this bubble that these people were going to live in for like an extended period of time. I think that was where some of the most interesting innovations will come from. I think hopefully it'll start to become a more open field. So it's still quite sort of specific in terms of who actually works in space medicine. A lot of people are interested in it, but those that work in it is quite restricted to flight surgeons and working for space agencies. But with these commercial companies coming up, then they're also going to have doctors, and they're also going to have researchers on their side. So I think it'd be interesting to see where it goes in terms of whether it opens up to a lot more people. It opens up opportunities as well for people like us who are just starting to get into it, and internships and that kind of thing would be really cool. And those are the two main ways that I see it changing. But the thing with the space industry is you never know how it's going to change, and then suddenly it goes that way, and that's why it's so exciting.
Yeah, I think that's why everyone's intrigued when they hear space, or when you hear rocketry, they're like, oh, something like super exciting is going to happen, because it's obviously a constantly evolving industry. So it's very cool. And I completely agree. I feel like before a lot of government agencies, there's like one, space program in your country, like NASA
Yeah.
or ISRO. And it's like, but beyond that, there's not many supporting programs. So to be able to see other private companies and a lot of startups forming, and also consulting companies to get jobs in space companies, it's very cool to see how so many people are trying to get involved and are dipping their feet in this industry. Like I feel like when I'm a little kid, I was like astronaut, but then after I got to a certain age, I was like, maybe that's not possible. So then I was like, oh, maybe I could be like a teacher or like an engineer or a doctor. And I feel like those are like the common stereotypical like jobs
Yeah.
a kid can think of. I feel like they don't think beyond that. And to make, to hopefully normalize, careers like space biologist would be very cool and very interesting to see.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so I'm really glad to get your input on that. And another thing I'm really curious on is, you've obviously had a very exciting journey. And what if you could give advice to, yourself from 10 years ago, and so like something you knew 10 years ago, what advice would you give to yourself and to the other young children listening out there? Something, it doesn't have to be related necessarily to space, but something about life that you think every single person should remember continuing forward, trying to achieve their dreams and goals.
If I had to pin it down to one thing, I mean, there's so much I could say on this, but if I had to pin it down to one thing, it would be try and ignore the imposter syndrome. Because, well, the best way that I think about it is that when I feel like, oh, I don't know enough to be here, why am I presenting at this sort of thing, this conference or that kind of thing, or why am I doing research on this kind of thing? I think the best way is that you need to realize that everyone has it. And even the people that you're looking up to and sort of admiring in their work, they often have it as well. And it's easier said than done, but trying to ignore that imposter syndrome definitely helps in terms of not letting you freeze and not letting you stop yourself from doing what you want to do. And with the space industry, what's awesome is that you can get involved from the level of being a high school student or middle school, college, that kind of thing. You can get involved throughout, and I think that's one of the most exciting industries to start in, because there are programs, there are internships, there are lots of sort of school visits as well that you can do and people you can meet and that kind of thing. So yeah, just getting involved. And the space industry is changing so rapidly that there'll be jobs in 10 years that we don't even know about now. So I think if you
Definitely.
just follow something that you're interested in, then there will be a job there eventually.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. And I feel like what's funny is practically every single person I interviewed talked about how people don't believe in themselves enough or they think they're not good enough. Even
Yeah.
an optical technician from NASA. I mean, like, she's so qualified. She works for an amazing organization. And she was like, when I first joined, I thought I didn't belong or I wasn't as smart to be a part of this company. It's not just smart, but it's the passion you have. It's the skills you've gained over the years that's important. It's not just about being this like super genius. So I think that's
Yeah,
really cool that
definitely.
you're also saying that. Yeah, I feel like it's always important for every single person to remember that they belong. And it's so cool to hear you say that exact same thing. And to kind of like wrap up the interview, like a whole theme about my interview has been space for all, like I mentioned before. So, what are your thoughts on space for all, and what advice would you give to young people, more related towards like education aspect on like trying to pursue their interest in the STEM field? Like, what instead of like a life motto, what is like a tip you would give to young children who feel like maybe I'm not fit for this or maybe I'm not good enough, like the syndrome you're talking about, but just in general, like what would you tell the kids to do, and how would you like what's your advice on this feeling that they have that maybe they're not smart enough to be a part of the space or STEM industry?
I think I would just say reach out and ask. So, and that could be asking a complete stranger, so on LinkedIn or that kind of thing. That's great for networking. But often if you ask, people will either have the time to help you themselves or they'll point you towards the right person. And the worst that can happen is that they don't even answer your message, and that's not really that bad in the grand scheme of things. So I definitely think it's worth asking, because that's how you can get the most interesting opportunities, and people can get to know your name, and next time something comes up they can send it along to you or that kind of thing. And yeah, just having a look for opportunities yourself as well. Google is an amazing resource that hopefully everyone has access to, and if you don't, you can also go through your school and ask them if they know any programs, and also building a network of people your age as well. So as I was saying earlier, the Paraboladies, the team that I'm part of, we all started really getting really into space medicine together, and since then we send each other opportunities, we work on stuff together, we often meet up at conferences and that kind of thing. So it's great to network with people that are experts in the field, but also getting a really nice community of people that are at your level as well is really interesting, and that's where often they'll find opportunities that you might not, and that kind of thing. And I think space for all is very important, just to give different perspectives, give different life experience as well, whole different fields as well. As you were saying, like you can do law in space, or you can do medicine in space, or you can do engineering, that kind of thing. So there is space for everyone in space, and I
Yeah.
think space for all is definitely a way that we can get some of the most interesting research and some incredible innovations out of it.
Yeah, I think those are some amazing words to kind of conclude our amazing Space Champion interview series. I think this interview, I think being able to show everyone that, you should believe in yourself. You should try to form a group of members, a community, and network with others in order to find people who are like you, who have the same passions, same interests, and can help you kind of do what you want to do in your future. I think it's really important for every single person to remember that, and thank you so much, Miss Ross, for taking your time to remind us all of what's really important, which is to follow your passion and dreams. And good luck in finishing your med school.
Thank you so much for having me. Don't be afraid to reach out as well if you have any questions.
Of course. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.